In celebration of Queen Victoria, of course, Victoria was the first person to really make the all-white wedding popular. Before Victoria, you would simply just be married in your best dress. It could be purple, it could be red, it could be green, but she created the first white wedding. So this is not Victoria's wedding dress, but it is of the era of Victoria. And it's a beautiful piece with a damask check throughout. But look at the gathering around the bodice. It is a miracle of work, and how it's beautifully pieced together on the bodice so that you have everything is in perfect alignment. And the gorgeous veil and the fabulous wreath, they were absolutely copying what Victoria did on her wedding day. And with this piece, we also have the wedding gloves. And in the 19th century, if your gloves had to be so thin and fine that they would fit into a walnut shell. So you could wad those up and put it in the walnut shell.
I love that.
That's what showed the quality of the leather. So this is just a fabulous dress. In a lot of ways, it's a very modern design in the fabric, but classic, 1840s, little tiny sleeves, very simple silhouette, and of course it took quite a bit of underpinnings to get that full hip action. And then of course here you have your semi-everyday, also the same era, beautiful damask, gorgeous materials. Again, beautiful pleating in the front, phenomenal gathering. This is not an easy thing to do, this gathering. This much material into that waist. Just a very simple decoration on the sleeves.
So chic though.
Yes, I'm kind of feeling that the hat doesn't really go with this ensemble. I think we looked at some hats in the other room that would have been a better choice, in my opinion, humble opinion. But what we're looking at here right now is domestic bliss. This is happiness. This is the upper middle class emerging. And again, here we have another fabulous print, beautiful silk linen weave, just the little simple pom-pom or rosettes in the front, and a beautiful little removable lace collar, I would call it. Just a fantastic piece. And then here we're in full throttle Spitalfield silk of just enormous amount of material, and there's actually very little decoration on the dress because it's all woven into the dress. There's a little silk chenille pom-pom decoration, but that's really it. So you've got the wonderful pagoda sleeves, which those would be removable. If you see how it comes out of the upper sleeve, that would be removable. They just undo the threads, and then they can put a lace sleeve in it, a false sleeve. And it's just a spectacular, 1850s English piece. And then, of course, we can argue this all day long with people that don't really understand fashion, but this is a little boy's dress. So until boys were reached, they wore dresses. And, it's beautiful, and you can also see, look at how rotund it is. Where a girl's dress would be a little more delicate. And this is a rare piece. I would love to wear that today. Men's clothing is hard to find because it got worn out. It didn't have the pretty factor, and they just threw it out. So when we find it, it's really a special occasion. And then, of course, we have a very simple iridescent silk dress with a paisley shawl, which paisley was all the rage at that time. But it's not the most exciting thing, but it's part of the story. But here's something that's very interesting. It's a pair of shoes. But if you notice the side, the cutouts, very much like a Huret shoe, those were elasticized. So that, rubber had come into common use, and they figured out how to weave rubber into linen, and voila, you have elasticized sides, which made it very easy to get in and out of a shoe. I have never seen a pair of 18th century or 19th century shoes that were wide. So I would have to go, if I lived at that time, I'd have to go shoeless. And I think you would too, Rachel. Yeah. So because they all had narrow feet.
I have a size 10 wide, everybody. So, what did they do? What did people do that
Well,
had custom shoes?
They'd have to have custom shoes, but almost all shoes were custom then. So we're going to step into, since we're in Bath, England, we can't ignore the Georgian period and the Regency period, which is when all of those wonderful Jane Austen stories were written, and was really probably the height of Bath being fashionable. So here we have this one is just one of the most beautiful pieces, and they're dating at about 1817, and I think that that's absolutely spot on. But I want the audience to see that by the early 19th century, they started to pipe things as a decoration. So look at that sleeve, the satin cutouts. That's all piped with the tiniest little piping, which is really amazing. But this is a beautiful piece. And then again, we have a boy's jacket, very, very cute. Just linen, so that it could be very durable and washable. But look at these flat shoes. I mean, those are just astounding that anyone had such a tiny little narrow foot like that.
And the gloves. I could never get my hand in any one of these pairs of gloves.
This is very interesting because India was then and still is a major producer of cotton, and that is an Indian print. Again, a very simple dress, almost no decoration. I think there's one bit at the below the flounces, but very, very simple. And then this piece here, this is 1790s. And you can see it almost looks like a shawl, a cashmere shawl. So this fabric was specially printed with this border print to use as a decoration. So basically, you have your border print, and then that was it. You just incorporated it into the design.
Love that coat.
And then we have 1790s men's, very simple. This would probably be for a merchant. This would not be for an aristocrat. This would be something a merchant would wear. But it's beautifully made and beautiful buttons. But what I think is very interesting is look at the size of the buttonholes. I mean, those buttonholes are like 4 times bigger than the buttons. So I think that's a very interesting feature. And again, look at these gorgeous 1780s slippers. I mean, are those not
Look at how sweet
delicious?
those are. Oh, I love the color.
Aren't those delicious?
Some wonderful fans.
And I mean, people that have ever followed the videos that Rachel and I have done, they know that I'm crazy for fans. So even though I'd like to have my glass cutter for a lot of things here, these I think I could get out of the building if I could get it. So let's look at this. When I think of this incredible museum, I always think of their 18th century pieces. This is really special because we have the waistcoat, the jacket, and the pants from 1780s. And to have all of those components is pretty amazing. But they have an amazing collection, and next time we come here, it'll all
fabulous.
Be
Look
different.
at the buttons. The buttons on the inside of it.
Yeah, the buttons are, when you just look at the buttons, you really have to worship them. They're just the embroidery work and all of those spangles that are just you can imagine them upstairs when they were having their balls, how beautiful they
Getting dressed.
And this piece, when you have this incredible Spitalfield silk, is it's mind-blowing. And again, with just a little simple bit of chenille trim. And of course, the lace was removable. It could be removed, put on one dress after another. And here you have the French-style dress with the open robe. All of these components are pinned together. On ladies' clothes, there are no buttons or hooks. They would pin them together.
Wow, look at all this detailing and all. There must have been 150 pins, 200 pins. I don't know.
You'd probably use 6 pins down the front, and then the side inner you would have pins, and then you would have inside these open areas. You had to have a place that you could get in and have your pockets.
I love this pink and green one back there.
Yes, and that's very, stripes were very, very popular. The problem with stripes is they're weaving different colors in, and as time goes by, you can have deterioration because of the dyes and the colors. And then here you have just a wonderful robe, which is meant to be a man's robe, but it's got kind of an Asian feeling to it, and he would probably wear a turban when he was dressed in that.
Now these look like they could be modern.
Yes, they do. I mean, and that's what's so interesting about some of these things. If you take away the silhouette, it could be modern. You could certainly wear it. I mean, the striped dress with just changing 3 or 4 things could actually be a modern outfit.
Oh yes.
So we're going to go where we should have really started, but it was very busy when we started. We didn't want to disturb everyone.
When we came in, they asked us if we needed an audio guide, and I wanted to say, nope, we've got Michael, we're good.
So here's where we should have really started.
Look at these amazing gloves.
These are all from the 1600s, and they are just absolutely extraordinary. So these are from the reign of Charles II and James II. I mean, these are treasures. These are things that should be in a museum. It should be preserved, and that they survived at all is just a miracle. I mean, look at the work on.
They look like little windows.
They look like little windows.
Like little stained glass
and then the
windows.
elegance of just the ruffle at the wrist is just too
Like how
much.
they pin the pinky out. It's just.
And then look at these ladies' evening gloves.
And those don't have stretch. Those would be kind of hard to get into.
Well, I think when they were new, they did have stretch. But as I would imagine now, they're all very dry and delicate.
Now, again, if you take away the time period, this looks like modern couture.
It does, and you're talking about 1610, 1615.
Amazing.
There are very few pieces this old in the world anywhere. And if you notice, it's got a matching cap up high. I'm sure they would wear that at different time frames, different times of the day. And then here we have a man's Tudor night shirt. I mean, that's Tudor. That's Henry VIII, Elizabeth I, Elizabeth I. So this is really, really ancient pieces.
This
And then you
skirt
have
is
a
interesting.
petticoat, and look at all of the embroidery. I mean, it was just an amazing bit of embroidery. And then again, we have a 1690s ladies' bodice.
Look at the needlework on that. I mean, it's
It's-
just unbelievable.
And that's needlework. That's not woven by a machine. That was all done by hand. And then we're going to take a quantum leap into the 1730s and 1740s, and now we start to have the Spitalfield silk. This piece is mostly complete with the exception of, I'm sure that collar was just put on it. This one is incomplete, so it has just the open robe and the lace on the cuffs still there. But it looks like the under piece is gone. And that would happen because a family would take the under petticoat and they might cover a chair seat with it. They might sell it because they needed to have the funds.
Well, and this was very expensive back then.
Clothing was expensive. And then here we have 1740s, monochromatic, beautiful man's waistcoat. And I just love this era of men's clothing. And this was a slim man, but some of the pieces have built-in little pot bellies so that they would, these waistcoats would accommodate the pot belly, which I always think is funny. And then, of course,
look at
we're
these.
crazy for shoes.
Look at these, everybody.
So here we have shoes
gosh.
covered in Spitalfield silk. But Rachel, what's very interesting is you'll have to get over where I am. So you have the shoe, and then you have the outer shoe that she steps into so that when she's walking around Bath, she doesn't wear her shoes out.
I need
you
that.
See that?
Yes.
I mean, it's actually very smart because it saves the shoes.
Man, that's awesome.
Madame Pompadour complained to her shoemaker that her shoes were wearing out, and his response to her was, "That's because you walk in them." So it's, that was a way to preserve a shoe.
I love that. Look at these twins.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. But look at this this piece here, and most articles of clothing are saved from people's youth when they had a great figure. This to me says a very much a matronly costume because it's pretty big, but yet look at the beautiful silk and the very simplicity of it, and then the beautiful stomacher, how they just picked that up. But visualize that with lace cuffs coming out.
Amazing. This ensemble you'd look fabulous in.
That's just beautiful cut velvet, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And look at those buttons. They're extraordinary buttons.
I really like velvet. Do you like velvet?
I do, and it's easy to work with. The one thing that most people make mistakes with is they try to press velvet, and you really can't press velvet except from the inside, not from the outside. And of course then baby's first dresses, so obviously someone had twins, which would have been really in 1750 rare that they would survive. But here you have, this is a triumph because you have two things going on. You have this incredible dress and matching shoes with the outer shoe. So
I love this outer shoe idea.
Yeah, it's you would think that someone in Paris would think about that. But I do have one thing I'm kind of curious about this dress. This might have been Victorianized for like a Victorian fancy dress party, because I have never seen on an 18th century dress beads hanging down like that. That's very 1860s concept. So this dress might have been repurposed for like a fancy dress ball, which you could have. You could have easily done that because the fabric is pretty durable.
This is just.
But look at this.
I love
piece.
that.
Look
cape
at that.
right there.
Yes, that piece.
Hopefully you guys can see that.
I love
Yeah.
that. That's almost like a Venetian carnival piece, and a lady could wear a tricorn hat with that and a mask and be very mysterious. But look at all the beautiful hand quilting. That is way more work than say this, which is much more expensive fabric.
This fabric is just wild. I can't even imagine how much it would have cost back
This
then.
would have been extremely expensive, just extremely expensive. And then we're going to jump over into the 1820s. Now here, if I have the body to wear that, I'd wear that every day.
Look at that. What is that neck piece called? It's not a cravat, but it's like a cravat, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Oh.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And
Love
with
it.
a neck scarf. But and then now we're starting to have long trousers in the 18th century. you had, knee breeches. Now we're starting to have long, slim trousers. And of course, the white on white is very lovely.
Again, the men's fashion, it feels like such a treat because we
don't really
men
get to
really
see
just
that.
wore their clothes a lot more than women.
And the fine lady that founded this institution, she had a lot of ins to get a lot of wonderful things from families, and she collected up thousands and thousands of pieces. It was really one of the first costume museums in the world that really focused on fashion. But look at this wonderful, the silk with I think they're morning glories, but look at the sleeve detail. I love it at the top where you've got kind of a fluted pleat and then little bows and then the little fluted pleat at the wrist. I mean, if you have a milliner's model that needs to be dressed, you should really stop and look at this video, press pause.
Take a screenshot.
Take a screenshot because we've got what you need. I mean, this would absolutely be perfect on a milliner's model. This would be perfect on a French carton doll. This would be perfect on a milliner's model. This would be ideal for, there's a lot of boys that are milliner's model, and this is really cute because it's something just a little different. And of course, you can make, and we have had many milliner's models that were in the original clothes, never touched, that had shoes on their painted shoes. So this could be also recreated.
This is as authentic as it gets, everybody, so I hope you're enjoying this incredible opportunity. The museum has given us permission to film, which is just absolutely wonderful, and it is incredible to be here with Michael's amazing amount of knowledge in fashion history. You must have done a lot of reading.
Well, I've been at this my whole life, and I mean, I'm just a poor little student, and this is something that you have to continue to work at.
Absolutely.
And it never ends.
Well,
of what we need to know.
We are incredibly fortunate.
I would love
to learn from you.
If we could, have these pieces to lay them out where we could really look at them but you know what, that's very hard on them. But I mean, I think the one thing that I'm so happy that we were here is to have all of these shoes with their outer shoe here to see today. Well, let's take a little break and we're gonna go look at some more
Toodle on over.
Things.
Thank you. Okay, everybody, so now we are standing in the accessories room. And look at this wedding dress collection.
What's really interesting about this wedding dress, Rachel, is that we're in Bath, England, a Bath spa in England. And here we have this late Victorian wedding dress, but it is in fact American. It's from New York City. The founder of this museum was very active in collecting in the last century. So she wanted to have representation of fashion from all different countries, even though this was absolutely in style in England or in France or in America. This is a New York City dress by a New York City dressmaker.
It's just amazing. How old is it?
This is probably about 1894. About 1894. But look at, they have the original corset and the original garters and the original shoes, which is just amazing.
Look at that, everybody. Look at how tiny that corset is.
It's tiny, but look how large her feet are in comparison to she wasn't tiny. I mean,
the waist
is tiny because that's the wasp waist era, but she's got broad shoulders, ample hips. But what's really interesting about this museum, if you look in the back,
look at all those boxes.
That's the archives. So this museum really has a tremendous collection, and so they rotate it, which is one of the best things for a museum that has textiles, things that are fragile, is to have them out and then put them away and give them a rest.
Yes.
I am a little bit disappointed because there's one special dress I wanted to talk about, but it's resting right now. But I believe we have photographs, so we can at least show that.
Oh, good.
And then here we have bonnets. So here we're in the bonnets, all the bonnets from the 1840s, 50s period. And, you know, in fashion, the older you get, the rarer the things are. Straw hats and various weaves are very delicate. But here's some very good examples of Victorian hats. And of course, we're celebrating Victoria. Any one of these hats could have been worn by Queen Victoria. And it's certainly one of her daughters. But you can see the boxes, which I'm just itching to get into. They're all labeled.
1740s, 1770s. Isn't that amazing?
Yes. And this is a massive collection. And right now it doesn't make any sense except that this is the storage unit. So let's walk over here and let me show you some beautiful 18th century, early 19th century. Well, these are all early 19th century. So if you love Jane Austen, the fabulous writer Jane Austen, who a good part of her novels, a lot of the subject matter has to do with bath, spa, because it was a fashionable place to come. So these are all of that era, and they are incredible. They're silk, and then they have the silk embroidery on the front. Very beautifully done. But what's very interesting about these pieces, because we have a few of these in the Grovian's collection, the backs are just very simple linen material. So they didn't waste the good material on the back. And you could also, if you were a man, if you gained a few pounds, which we all have happened, it could be easily altered. But again, look at this.
Very
it's
festive.
all waistcoats. All of these tubs are filled with fabulous pieces.
I love how they have them just simply waistcoats, 1810, 1820, 1830. Wow.
I mean, I wish we had that kind of organization to do things like this. But they also have a tremendous amount of space to do it.
Yes.
One thing I will tell you, what is different is when we came here in 1987, none of that was here. This was all exhibit, and they had massive exhibits. And I think decisions have been made to have less so that it can preserve the garments better.
So they can rest. Well, this was such a fun little peek.
Let's go over here and look at
Queen
gloves.
Elizabeth.
From Queen Elizabeth to Queen Victoria. This is a scrumptious exhibit, because here we have a pair of gloves that were owned by Elizabeth I.
Wow.
And look how long the fingers are. I don't know that her fingers were long, but you know, at that period in the 1600s, 1500s, I should say, it was fashionable to have long, slim fingers. And then here, James I's gloves. Again, extraordinarily beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. But when we get to Charles I,
Those are wild.
those are just phenomenal. And gloves would have been given throughout the whole, in the past, they'd be given as a very special personal gift to people. You would give a glove, one glove, or a pair of gloves as really a token of affection, because gloves were very personal. They were on, in your skin. And then we have two pairs of gloves. Now we're very simple. These are Queen Victoria's gloves. So you have, a little day wear glove, and then these knitted pieces. These would be for, you could wear that with an evening gown.
There, you guys can see a little bit better from the side. We have less of a glare. It is so cool to be just standing in front of them right now.
Yes, and then this is something to marvel at. The present Queen's ceremonial gloves that she wore during her coronation. And these really are a national treasure, a world treasure. The Queen is a phenomenal woman.
Wow.
And she has had the longest reign of any British monarch and done a great job. And really her gloves, if you really look at them, are as fine a quality as any of these other pieces.
They're all amazing. The most understated ones
But
really
you
are
know
probably
what?
Queen Victoria's.
Yes, because I would imagine she had much more fantastic gloves, but this is what the collection decided to show. And actually it's showing a
Range.
contrast, because in a lot of ways, Queen Victoria wanted to give off a very middle-class vibe. But here we have something that's very interesting to our collectors out there. They have a fashion doll, a German fashion doll. And we're looking at a styled in 1870s clothing. She's wearing the latest short skirts that were a little sporty. But what's really interesting about dolls, they have in this museum many almost complete costumes. But if you really want to find historically the most complete costume, from the shoes, underwear, corsets, headwear, hairstyle, it's in dolls.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
It's
just
one
a
of the things we
beautiful
love
piece.
about them.
And there are more dolls.
More dolls, everybody.
See, we had this
Had it all
planned
planned
for
out.
you people. We've got this all
Aren't we so
figured
lucky?
out.
Michael
Now,
and David as our docents.
look
Wow.
at these incredible wax over paper maches with their amazing clothes, with the counterpart of the real thing, the people's clothes.
It's very
But
clever.
it's very clever, and it makes for a beautiful presentation. But look at the blues and this gorgeous silk, which this could be Spitalfield silk, but it could also be French silk. And I would guess that that's an all original presentation, but that could be English rather than Germanic clothes. That could be English, an English dressing where it was the shop dressed it.
Oh, it's just marvelous.
And
Look
then
at this sweet chubby
one
girl.
is the dress with the
Oh, it's
exquisite lace, and then the purple and the floral trim. But then look at the doll. It's probably most likely a Kuno Otto dressel.
Now, a doll with this, or a dress with, where would somebody wear something like that?
You would wear this for promenading.
Okay.
This would be a daytime piece that you would wear out. You could also wear it at a reception. It would most definitely have had two bodices. So you'd have a skirt, and you'd have this daytime bodice, and then you'd have another bodice that would be an evening bodice, so that you could get more wear out of it. And I don't mean wear, but function for different things. And then we've
was
got
so
more
fun.
dolls.
More dolls.
Because we've got more dolls. They knew we were coming, so they put them all out. So look at this, again, a beautiful burgundy piece. Look at all those buttons and the incredible, I mean, that could be on Versace today, how they've done the
I'd love
buttonholes
to wear it.
down. And I mean, it's very, very chic. And then the counterpart of the Simon and Halbig lady doll, dressed, reflecting what you're seeing on the full-size mannequin. And then, of course, you have your plaids. And then we have probably a little barrois. And, they're not exactly the same thing, but it's kind of the same feeling.
I have a question.
Yes.
They're not under the same era either, are they?
Well, no, this is just it's the same era,
Is it?
but she's got like a jacket over, so it's
Okay, so
coming.
meant to be long.
Yes, it's meant to be long. It's a jacket over like that. So if you took that jacket off, there would be something similar to this.
Okay.
I mean, I think they've got it pretty good. I mean, it's a little different silhouette in the skirt, but I think there's also probably not, there's a lot of drawstrings and pulleys in doing fashion. So I would think that has probably lost some of the drawstrings. But then, what we really want to do is we know that those boxes have more goodies. So this is a museum that if you come here in 6 months, it's going to be all different.
Yes, I love that.
In
Yes.
fact, I think it's different from.
Oh, it totally,
It's totally different. From America.
So
Because they have that
It's-
fantastic Georgian.
you have photographs of it.
Oh,
I was
from our last
yes,
visit.
but I was expecting to
Be able to
have you
share.
everybody have to get their hanky
They have
out.
an incredible pannier,
Yeah.
complete costume for it.
They
all.
have the what we would call the original fashion doll dress, the real 18th century
it's not
piece.
out.
It's not out, but we'll get a photo
We'll
and
post
it'll
some
go
photos.
when it's. But I feel very fortunate that we have
Oh, it's great
to
to
see
have
what we
this.
have today.
Fantastic. They
This
have
was
several
amazing.
dolls.
So shall we come back in a little bit?
Fashion
and-
Focus, yep. We will be
Okay.
back with our next installment. Okay, everybody, we've navigated over to an extraordinary room. I feel like there's some 20s. Am I
That's
wrong?
right.
Yeah.
We're in the 1920s and the 1930s. So again, this collection has a lot of wonderful men's pieces. So here we have a formal evening tuxedo that if it were my size, I would be squeezing into it. And then of course there's the classic bias cut 1930s. That's the back. Now that is modern. That could be,
Love it.
you could wear that right today. And then you also have the 1920s pajama set and that, the pajama look. And in the 1920s, that's when pajamas became popular. So it made its way to everyday wear, and it's in the chinoiserie style. And then we have, of course, the classic beaded 1920s dress that's actually very, very chic. Those dresses are so heavy because of all the beading that they tend to self-destruct under their own weight. But this piece here, this is just the most wild thing. It's obviously a fancy dress piece. But here's something that's really very, very rare. And this is a World War I nurse's apron. There's very few of these because what they went through, they were just thrown out because they became so soiled and stained that they could never be cleaned. And if you notice, the cross is very wonky. That's because in order to launder the dress or the apron, you have to take the cross off and re-sew it back on. So it's really very interesting. This piece behind, again, is something that could be very modern, and that may be a ladies' motor corps uniform,
It looks like
which
it.
would be very, also very rare piece to find. And of course, then you have your late Edwardian evening gown, beautiful. I would imagine it's crepe. It's all beaded. The interesting thing about this era, if you took this dress off of the form and put it on a hanger, it would look just blah. It needs the human body to make it all work. It has very drapey. And then of course, everybody now is wild for Downton Abbey, which they should be. So here you have probably it would be the very early part of the Downton Abbey show. And the piece in the back, that is for touring in your motor car.
Oh, I love that.
Yes, it's called a dust. It's called a duster. So that would keep the dust off of you because you were out in the elements at that time. When your car's top speed is 30 miles an hour and you don't have good roads,
Yeah, that can
you need
be,
that.
that can get a little shaky.
Excuse
Excuse us, yes.
And then of course, our theme of what we're
Look at
doing.
those tiny gloves.
Look at those tiny gloves, but the theme of what we're doing is Queen Victoria. So here's a court presentation dress at the time of Victoria, and look at that. And so it would have a detachable train that you could put on and take off, and then the garment would have extra use. And again, look at the incredible lace.
It's just divine.
And that was a very important thing to be presented at court. And then it looks like we have
Tiny. They
doll
all-
gloves.
Those, I was gonna say, they
Those
have
are
to be
doll
doll
gloves.
gloves.
Looks like we
There's no
have
hands that are that small.
two pairs of French fashion doll gloves and 2 pairs of baby.
Miniature gloves.
And then, of course, children's clothes, which are very charming. And here's something that's very rare to survive also. It's a lady's riding habit. So that's
love it.
really neat. And of course, this corset could be, you could see someone at the Met Gala just wearing that with, that's all.
These days, that's for sure.
But I
Lady
wanna
Gaga
show-
would love
I want to
that.
show you a piece that's one of my favorites.
Now, look at the tiny waist on that.
Oh yeah, she's got
That's-
a little wasp waist. I mean, this is 1891, and this is, let's see, it's Mary Chamberlain. So this is an important person's dress. It's so important that she had her portrait painted in it.
Now, these ones just look like as delectable as ice cream.
Well, I thought since we are celebrating Victoria and we are a doll group, I will save the best for last as far as doll costuming. So we challenge you all out to create this 1870s dress for your Bru fashion or your Jameau fashion. And it's just delectable. You know, it's that coral color that they loved, blonde lace. They've used the pinking to do all of the ruffles. You know, you could actually recreate this because most of these items are available. You know, it's you know, just a beautiful taffeta. You know, I mean, it's not easy to find, but you could find it. But look at, come back here, Rachel, and
see the
see
mirror.
the
Look at that,
the
everybody.
silhouette. Isn't that fantastic?
No, just. Okay, guys, now you have your idea. Here's the group challenge.
And if that's not enough, we have another
Look at the neckline on that.
another piece, same era, but a day wear piece. But what I love is I always love a little fan pocket on the side. That's a little fan pocket.
Isn't that just...
And then if you want to do mourning, because you know Victoria spent a big part of her life in mourning. Here we've got a watered taffeta. It's a beautiful mourning piece. It's actually totally chic. Fantastic piece. But then look again, this bustle gown from the 1880s. Again, just beautiful and simple. But I think we should say goodbye because we've got more things to cover. But again, this is my pick of all the pieces in this museum to use for doll dressing, is this beautiful bath
Top pick, everybody. That's
evening dress from 1870.
looks like a Sunday.
We'll
Thank you,
s-
Michael. That
we'll
was
see you all later.
extraordinary. Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.